I can't express how happy I am to finally be able to defend this project, so let's get started. First, I'd like to discuss the methodology and development of the project. This course was developed and designed using the ADDIE model method. The 5 phases analysis, design, develop, implementation, and evaluation represented a dynamic, flexible guideline for building an effective training. During the analysis phase, I defined a system of interest by outlining who would benefit from the anticipated training. After some consideration and discussion with my manager, we concluded that individuals who were directly associated with the architectural and design communities would be targeted. We were certainly open to the idea of training whole organizations as well as individuals and teams. In addition, the learning problems, goals, objectives were all defined. There was no need to gauge the existing knowledge of the material because the module was designed with complete novices in mind. I spent some time developing an estimated timetable and budget for the project and presented to my team. I also spent some time interviewing a few individuals on my team who are extremely knowledgeable in this field. And lastly, we discussed online versus face-to-face training. We determined that we found it was acceptable to train our in-house education managers via webinar, but future trainings with clients and A&D members would need to be conducted face-to-face. Outlines, storyboards, graphic elements, and user interface were created during the design phase. The presentation delivery method was also created. I planned on presenting our webinar using the AT&T service. This allowed me to share my screen with all the participants, and they had the option of using their computer speakers or calling in using the teleconference line. The development stage was dedicated to an actual creation of the project content and materials defined in this phase. All interfaces were created and video was implemented, and the project came together. The plan was put into action during the implementation stage. Invitations were sent out to attendees and they were registered. After being registered, the education managers were trained via webinar. Lastly, there was an evaluation. This consisted of 2 phases, formative and summative evaluations. The formative assessment is ongoing throughout each stage of the ADDIE model to ensure that all stated goals and objectives of the learning process were met. The summative stage evaluation referenced feedback from all users. The audience for this portion of the training was the Art Cobell education managers. There were a total of 8 participants and their involvement was mandatory. These members are required to be trained before they are able to schedule CEU trainings with A&D members or other individuals in the industry. Once the education managers accepted their invitation, they joined their peers in an online training via webinar. During the introduction, course participation and expectations were shared. It was clarified that in order to receive credit, they must stay present in the chat room for the full hour. They were expected to participate and ask questions during the question and answer session. The success of the assignment to design, deliver, and evaluate a continuing education unit based on the theory of the living classroom needs to be observed from 2 viewpoints. 1. Did the model meet the guidelines set by IDCEC, and did the course feedback indicate that the course content delivery methods, quality, and course design helped the trainee meet the course objectives? The Interior Design Continuing Education Council approved the course with no deficiencies, and it was able to be present for the next 2 years. Per IDCEC guidelines, participants need to attend the hour-long session in order to obtain their credit. Attendance was reported and all 8 participants received credit for the training session. I'll discuss evaluation categories in the next few slides. Assessment of the living classroom commenced at the end of the presentation. Periodically throughout the course, the presenter would take breaks to allow attendees to ask questions. If no questions were asked, I created roundtable discussions by asking questions related to the module that was learned about. One question that I asked was, how was technology changed in the classroom since you were in school? The average age of these attendees was 45. Obviously, there have been some significant technological advances, so this conversation was very engaging. We also conversed about how teachers now cater to different learning styles. Many expressed that there were no such things as visual or kinesthetic learners when they were in school. Attendees were discussed. They discussed how a typical classroom functioned, and they indicated that teachers would sit at the front of the room facing the students who were lined up in straight rows of combination desks, which were chairs attached to the desk. Lastly, we discussed how teachers are integrating 21st century concepts in their classroom. These 8 individuals are on the forefront of selling 21st century learning environments, so they had some really great insight to share. They are seeing a transformation from the linear or industrial influenced way of teaching to a collaborative, bring your own device movement. These discussions were implemented to keep trainees involved in the presentation as well as engage them in the new knowledge. After completing the first training session, I realized there was some really good discussion regarding collaborative learning spaces and furniture layouts. This made me realize that they were interested in the topic. Conducting a live presentation allowed me to gauge the knowledge and interest of the participants and adjust the presentation on the fly according to their knowledge base. Right away, I discovered a few weaknesses in my presentation. Or maybe it wasn't the presentation itself, but my lack of presenting to this crowd. It was hard to keep them from getting off topic, and they had a wealth of knowledge and they're very eager to share, but the time constraints didn't allow for that. I had to try very hard to rope them back into the subject at hand, but due to the time restrictions, a few of the question and answer sessions were cut short. It was recommended that some sales tools and strategies on how to get teachers, principals, and other office officials on board with the 21st century learning be applied to the session. This presentation taught what the living classroom was, but not how to sell it. It was also suggested that I connect the living classroom concept to a specific curriculum or grade. The course itself was very general and did not highlight any particular course or age group. The purpose of the living classroom final assessment was to determine if the course design was successful based on the following criteria. 1. Presentation of learning goals and objectives. 2. Course organization. 3. Instructional design. And 4. Instructional strategies. Overall, the participants found the course to be well planned and organized. Collectively, the group thought that the course objectives were clearly defined, even though they were only communicated verbally and not displayed on a slide. Trainees noted that the information was relatable and the content could easily be shared with others. One learner was quoted saying, "The slides were visually interesting but not too busy." The evaluation concluded that the participants gained an understanding of the living classroom and they would all recommend this CEU to others. The participants found the instructor, which would be myself, to be knowledgeable of the subject matter, and they stated that the course started and finished on time. Timing was important because students do not get credit for classes that are less than or over an hour long. Participants found that the instructor was helpful and available to answer questions. Effective teaching techniques enhanced students' learning as noted by the scholars. All attendees agreed that the course was beneficial, especially since their job or careers require many of them to have ongoing professional development. One trainee stated that understanding new theories, trends, and changes in design of learning spaces is key to servicing my clients and representing my company. Another mentioned, although there is no annual ongoing development required for my position, I like to keep up to date with rapidly changing information related to the education industry. I specialize in learning environments, and due to the quickly changing education market, keeping abreast of new information is imperative. Comments indicated that our education managers would like to participate in future Art Cobell CEUs specifically related to movement and case studies. Color theory was also suggested as a future topic. One manager stated that we are constantly working with principals, teachers, or board members who do not believe in integrating technology into the classroom. They're a bit old school. It would be great to have a presentation that helped open their minds to new ideas. The most constructive feedback received was information on how to instruct based on the audience. This evaluator felt as if the presentation flipped between educators and designers. It was suggested that we tailor a presentation specifically for education officials and a separate one for the A&D community. It was also noted that the course was not challenging enough. And this particular trainee has been in the company and in the industry for quite some time, so his knowledge base is very large, so it's very possible that he was not challenged. He suggested that training be held for those who are new to the company and or the education field, and another more advanced training created for the seasoned teams. Based on the evaluations, the difficulty level was the least successful aspect of the course design. 4 learners strongly agreed that the difficulty level was appropriate. 3 noted that they agreed the difficulty level was appropriate, and 1 learner disagreed that the difficulty level was appropriate. In addition to the unsatisfactory difficulty level, it was evaluated that the course objectives were not as clearly defined as they could be. They were verbally spoken during the presentation, but there was not a PowerPoint slide dedicated to the objectives, and there should have been. Additionally, I would like to incorporate an interactive model using the Kids Collaborator app on the iPads. This would bring an element of gaming to the presentation and give trainees a visual while working towards learning objectives and creating connections. Ideally, this would lead to student motivation and interest in the living classroom concept. Lastly, I think it is important to provide new resources for them to use while presenting the learning classroom concept to potential clients. These resources would include animations, idea books, and a slide deck from the presentation to use as tools. Hopefully this kit would motivate them to sell the idea of the living classroom and also help them. Thanks for taking the time to review my project and all your help thus far. I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday. Thanks.